Okay. Gentlemen, or ladies and gentlemen who are going to be joining us live as well. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hanukkah. Always nice. Festival of Lights. Yeah. Let's get going. Okay. Vayhi Mikeitz Nosayim Yomim. We're Parshas Mikeitz. This is on page, if you start on page 222, in the Article Sidurim. Hi, Ralph. Page 222.
222.
Yes, that's right. 222 in the Art Scroll Chumashim. We're discussing Parshas Mikeitz. So, Vayhi Mikeitz Nosayim Yomim, and it was at the end of 2 years, Ufara Choylem, and Para is dreaming, V'ino Imed Al Ya'or, and behold, he is standing by the river. The Ar Chaim points out, the Ar Chaim Rav Chaim ben Atar, who is one of the foremost commentators on the Chumash. Almost every Chumash is like this. This is called the Mikros Gedolos, has the Ar Chaim's commentary on it. Not that one.
No, it's got a biography.
It's another biography, Rabbi Chaim ben Atar. Yeah. Died actually quite young. It was a very, very big Makubal, a very big Rav and Posek, as well as a commentator. So he writes that the word Vayhi, if you look in the Gemara Megillah tells us, Vayhi means it has a meaning of sadness. And the question that many ask is, Vayhi Mikeitz Nosayim Yomim. Vayhi meaning it was a sad thing that we had now come to the end of these 2 years, which sounds very strange, because if you think about it, what happens now? What happens at the end of these 2 years? That should be the happy part of the story, right? Yosef has been in prison. First of all, Yosef gets sold down to Egypt. He's by Potiphar. Things don't go so well by Potiphar, or they start going really well, until his master's wife takes a liking to him, tries to seduce him. He withstands her advances and lands up in jail for that, which is already, you think to yourself, where is justice? Where's the justice in that? I held back, I didn't do the Avera, and what do I get for holding back and not doing the Avera? I get thrown into jail? And he wasn't there just for a short amount of time. He was there actually for over 10 years. Right? Because there's going to be 9 years now that he's going to be the viceroy. But until he became the viceroy, he was 22 years away from his father, so you have 13 years beforehand. This story with Potiphar's wife happened pretty soon after this story of him being sold down to Egypt. So he's about 12 years in this jail. 12 years is a long time to be languishing in a jail. Now remember, this is not Strange Race. Sure, Strange Race is not great. I've never been inside Strange Race. Not forget about as an inmate. I mean, even as a visitor. Obviously not as an inmate, but even as a visitor, I've never been in there. No, there are Jewish people that are in jails around the country, but I've never been asked to visit anybody in jail. Doesn't mean that I wouldn't, but I just have never been asked. And I don't know anybody from our community. I don't know anybody that's sitting in jail, so I don't end up going to jail. But I've been told it's not a fun place to be. I've been told it's not exactly a great place where you'd say, this is where I want to hang out. Strange Race is really nice. It's not. And that's for the people that come to visit. The inmates have an even harder time. Nobody wants to be an inmate in a jail. But you still have a bed, and you still get heat in the winter, and hopefully it's cool enough in the summer, and you get food, and maybe you get to watch television. Not terrible. I mean, again, I would never ask for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm not here saying advocating, saying like, it's great. If you could go to jail, you have a great time. I'm sure it's not a great time. But compare that to what jails used to look like in the medieval ages. And before that, if you go back to Egypt 3,000 years ago, it was a pit. Without any light, without any bed, without any heat, without any great food. There was nothing. This is jail. Jail was jail. It was harsh. So you have jail, and he's there for 12 years in jail, and finally we get to the point where he's able to come out of that jail. After those 2 years, Vayhi Mikeitz Nasayim Yamin, it was at the end of those 2 years. What had happened in last week's Parasha, we have the wine butler and the chief baker, and they sin against Pharaoh, and he interprets their dreams. They come out. They're meant to remind Pharaoh. They don't. And because they don't remind Pharaoh, he languishes in prison for even longer. Another 2 years. Now we finally get to the end of those 2 years. And here should come the part that we're really excited about. Here should come the part that we're really into. Thank God Yosef's getting out of jail. Thank God this stupid fellow finally remembered him. And he remembers him, and they bring him out of jail. This is great. Says the Torah, Vayhi Mikeitz Nasayim Yomim. Vayhi means a sad occurrence. What's sad about that? Thank God the protagonist in this story is finally having a good turn of events. Right? So how do you understand that? So Ar Chaim says, he says a few answers. I want to focus on one specific answer. I'm going to mention one other answer. Before we get that answer, is because we're moving into famine mode, and God's not happy about giving a famine. For whatever reason, God decided to make a famine anyway. But it's not something God says, yes, famine. People are going to starve. It's going to be great. None of that. That's not what God is like. That's number one. So he's very upset. There's going to be a famine. For whatever reason, there's going to be a famine. But it's not something that God rejoices with. But he finishes, he says, the first explanation that he said is, this is where the next stage of the Jewish Golus, the first Jewish Golus down to Mitzrayim, is about to begin. This is where we start. Yosef is about to become the viceroy. He's about to make Egypt the most powerful country in the world. He's going to make it the breadbasket of the world, as they like to call it, where everybody was going to come to get food. And with everybody, we include, obviously, the brothers. The brothers will come. They will have some food. They'll try to buy food, etc., etc. And then they're all going to come down to Egypt. That is the beginning of Golus. Says the Ar Chaim, it says, Vayhi, to tell us this was the beginning of the Golus, this was the beginning of the exile. This is not a time to rejoice. And with that, I think, comes a very important lesson that I once heard also by Rav Zev Leff. Rav Zev Leff has recently become famous for being the Rav that sat at the Israel-Scotland game with his Gemara, not looking out even when people scored. So as Rav Zev Leff said the following. He said, in order for us to know what is or what is not a great moment in history, we need to consult Chazal. We need to consult our rabbis. We can't just decide on this is probably a pivotal moment in history. This looks like a pivotal, positive moment in history. Yet the Torah is telling us, Vayhi. Don't look at Yosef. Yosef is looking at the small micro thing. Yeah, the poor little kid that's been languishing in jail is going to get out. But you know what this means? He's going to get out. It's going to mean large-scale golus for everybody. So that was seen as a terrible thing. He gives another example. He didn't give this example, Rabbi Leff, but the example Rabbi Leff gives is a very famous example. Ptolemy II was the king over Israel, and he was very much into philosophy, and he was into learning, etc., etc. And what he wanted is he wanted to know what the Jewish Torah says. So what did he do? He had the Torah translated, and that is known as the famous Septuagint, right? Is it Septuagint or Septuagint? Whatever it is. It's the Septuagint is the translation of 70. Yes?
Targum Shivim.
Targum Shivim, correct. The Gemara in Megillah tells us a story of the Targum Shivim. The Gemara says that Talmai HaMelech, or that's how he's known in the Gemara, Talmai in English. Ptolemy, with a P, silent P, right? Ptolemy, the king, takes 70 leading Jewish scholars, locks them all in a room, makes them all translate the Torah, and then he's going to look at... President wishes everyone happy Hanukkah. Thank you. He locks everyone, 70 people, into different rooms, gives everyone a copy of the Torah and says, translate. And the Jews felt that they had to translate, but they had to be very careful how they translate, and they want to make sure that they didn't make certain mistakes. So certain things they changed around. For example, instead of saying Bereshis bara Elokim, They write Elokim bar Bereshis. This is a Gemara in Talmud and Megillah 9a. If you wanna know where it is. So instead of Bereshis, why? Because let's translate. Bereshis means in the beginning bara Elokim, God created. But we could also translate incorrectly Bereshis, somebody by the name of Bereshis, bara created Elokim, created God. So if you read it literally, you can say Bereshis is some entity that created God. We didn't want that to be read that way, even though we knew there's no such entity called Bereshis, etc. But people who are looking for mistakes will find them anywhere they want to. And so therefore, Bereshis bar Elokim, they wrote and said, Elokim bar Bereshis. God created in the beginning, as opposed to in the beginning God created. In this way, we wouldn't be able to read it in the beginning created God. Right? Similarly, God, when He calls the Malachim together, the angels together, when He creates man, He says, what? Let us make man. And Rashi comments on that already over there. Why say, let us make man? Why? What should He have said? I am going to make man. And again, who's He talking to? He's talking to the angels. But why is He saying, let us? Which seems to say God is either taking permission or God is taking a few other people and saying, guys, this one's going to be a hard one. I don't know, I'm going to put this all together. Can you help me with this one, guys? Anybody got a good idea? Let's put a face. Face is a good idea. What else? Hands. Not bad. Legs. Great. We're getting somewhere. God didn't need the ideas from him. What do you mean, let us make man? Why does He say that? So Rashi points out in Bereshis, let us make man is there because God is trying to show His humility that He consulted the angels before He created mankind. So Rashi says, yeah, but it lends itself to incorrect interpretations as well. Means you can have an atheist or you can have a polytheist open up the Torah and say, let us make man. Well, there you go. God had helpers. Santa's little helpers, God's little helpers. What? Why did He write it like that? So Rashi explains that even though the interpretation or even though the verse lends itself to people trying to take poetic license with it, God writes what He wants to write, and if people make a mistake, it's tough luck. He's not going to start turning the Torah upside down for a few crooked people that want to try to find fault and mistakes in the Torah. That's what Rashi says. And so there were a whole bunch of things like that all 70 of them decided to change, which was a tremendous miracle. Because there were 70 people in 70 different rooms translating the Torah. You would expect that if one or two people made changes, not everybody made changes, and that would make things very suspect for the king. He would go, this one writes Bereshis bar Elokim, this one writes Elokim bar Bereshis, this one Bereshis Elokim. What's going on? You guys have no idea. You guys don't know what you're doing. You're translating your Torah, different people translating different things. Could have gone in tremendous, tremendous trouble. Instead, there was this massive miracle. So would you say this must have been a happy day for Klal Yisrael, this miracle? We would say so. Yet, says Rav Leff, if you look in the Gemara says, and we're coming there in a week and a half, you have the 10th of Teves. 10th of Teves is a fast, but the Gemara says there were 3 things that happened in those 3 days. On the 8th, Septuagint, the translation of the Torah. On the 9th, Ezra Sofer died. On the 10th, they breached the walls of the city of Jerusalem. You say, what do you mean? And therefore the Gemara says we should have really fasted 3 days in a row. It's impossible to fast 3 days in a row, so we didn't obligate anybody to fast 3 days in a row. And therefore we said just 10th of Teves. But it's very strange. That means that what we're really saying is that even though this day to all of us would seem to be a miraculous day, the Torah is telling us with all the miracles that happened on that day, this is a sad day. This is not a happy day. And therefore we need to realize that when we look at days such as over here, the end of 2 years, you think to yourself, this is a happy occasion. Finally Yosef makes it out. We say, yes, that is a happy occasion that finally Yosef makes it out. But don't think that because finally Yosef makes it out, that is a long or a big view of everyone that's happy for everyone. Hi, Van. Rather, it is not. It is something that is considered a sad point for the Jewish people because the rest of the Jewish people are going to be forced down into exile. Okay? That's point number 1. Let's move on to point number 2. Point number 2 is a very interesting thing. And many people struggle with this. We had verse 9. People are trying to translate the dreams and everyone's having a hard time. Nobody's been able to translate the dream. And now in verse 9 it tells us, this is probably still page 222 in the Art Scroll Chumashim. Vaydaber Samashkim as Parole, Samashkin spoke to Pharaoh saying, Es chatoai ani maskirayom, I remember my sins today. Paro kotzav alavadov. Paro got angry on his servants. Vayitenos ime mishmani, put me in prison. Beisat habochim, in the prison at the house of the man in charge of all of the livestock and all of the animals that are to be sacrificed and given to the king. Osi, myself, Veisar Ofim, as well as the man, the chief baker. We both had dreams on one night. We both not only dreamt a dream, but we also dreamt a dream that would then be interpreted correctly, and we got exactly what our dreams were interpreted as. Vishami Tanu, and there with us. Now listen to this verse. Vishami Tanu, there was this verse 12. Nar Ivri, a lad, a Jewish lad. Eved Lasar Tabochim, a servant, a slave to this chief butcher. Vanasapalo, we told him, and he went ahead and he was able to translate our dreams. Ish kachalamo pasar, a man like his dream did he go ahead and translate. Rashi says, Nar Ivri. In verse 12, Rashi says, Arurim harishoim, cursed are the wicked. Shein toivason shlemo, maske beloshim bizayon. They don't want to really help others. What's he trying to do over here? He's trying to undercut Yosef. He's trying to make Yosef look bad. He's about to say, Yosef, do you know what he owes Yosef? He owes Yosef a tremendous amount of gratitude for the dreams I interpreted and for the fact that he got him out of jail. Instead, he's out of jail, and now he says, with us, Nar, says Rashi, is a shota, an idiot. Don't think that this guy deserves to be anything special. An idiot. Ivri. He doesn't even know how to speak our languages. Eved. He's also a slave. He's a servant. What does he know? He's a nothing. He's a garnished. Don't give this guy anything. Okay? So in the simple reading of Rashi, you read that the Saramashkim, the fellow, the special wine butler of Pharaoh, is really giving Yosef a hard time, trying to make sure Yosef does not make it out of prison. However, Rabbi Yerucham, whom we spoke of a few times already in this shir in the past few weeks, he says that not necessarily is it to be understood like that. It could be understood as a point that's being made with, do you know what a backhanded compliment is? You know, that kind of thing. Roger, finally you look good today. Yeah? If I say that to you, what am I really saying to you? Every other day you look awful. Finally today you look good. So I've given you a compliment, right? Now obviously this is not to be taken seriously. I'm making one of them up. Yeah? But it's the kind of thing where on the one hand, yes, you're giving a compliment, but with the compliment, what's in there?
Sting in the tail.
A sting in the tail. There's a sting in the tail there. Yeah?
Yes.
Today the rabbi gave a good sermon. Yeah? Or the question somebody said, that's the worst question to ever ask anybody. Have you stopped beating your wife yet? Yeah? What are you supposed to say? No? That's not a good thing. Yes, which means you used to beat her, right? It's a no-win situation, that question. And some of these comments or compliments that you give people are similar to that. You take a compliment and you actually have a barb that you want to give the person. And you wrap it around the compliment. And it's that like little hit with a compliment and a patch at the same time. Says Rabbi Yerucham, you got to be so careful when you give compliments, when you're willing to speak about other people. Are you effusive in the way you say it? Are you very reserved famous joke. I had this fellow used to sit next to me in shul, used to love telling this joke. Not here, in Vienna. The fellow in Vienna, he used to love telling jokes. He had a little diary, he used to pull out the diary, he had like 20 jokes in there, and he used to tell the same jokes all the time. Have you ever heard this one? I'm like, the same jokes have been in there for years. For years. I've heard them already. So he used to love telling the joke where one fellow turns to the fellow standing next to him and goes, look at that guy. Wow, look at his nose. Awful. It's massive and big. It's such a Jewish nose. Terrible. And the fellow standing next to him, do you mind? That's my son. He goes, really? On him it looks perfect. Yeah? That's sort of the, you catch yourself. Try to fix it. But in reality, you're not really fixed it. What you said is the rest of the face is also ugly. So on him it looks perfect. The nose fits the rest of the face perfectly. Yeah? No, a nice way to put it, Roger, is it? Yeah? So that's the story. You have over here Yosef being treated badly by the Sarat HaMochim. He might not even have wanted to say things as extreme as Rashi puts it. But you have to be careful when you give a compliment, when you're willing to say something nice about somebody else, make sure that the compliment is a full compliment. Don't make it a halfway house. Yeah, it's a compliment if you read it this way. If you put the dot somewhere else, it's a whole different story. The guy swimming in a pool. So he came over, what are you doing? Well, you're not allowed to swim here. Why? Look at the sign, no swimming allowed. Guy comes over, that's how you read it? No! Swimming allowed. Yeah? You just have to put the dot somewhere else. Suddenly it's a very, very different sentence. That's how you talk to people. Being careful in each word, making sure that being very, very clever, that when you say something you can give him a punch at the same time. That's not how we do things. We need to know the way to compliment and the way to be appreciative is properly. Right? You like something, be nice about it. You didn't like something so much, but you wanted to say thank you, still say thank you properly. Find a way. Find a way to go beyond yourself. Not just we don't like to give compliments that easily. Something holds us back because in giving a great compliment, sometimes makes us feel a little bit inadequate. Wow, she's such a good cook. Yeah, what about me? I'm also a good cook. Yeah, so you don't want to say she's such a good cook. She's an amazing cook. Yeah, her food's quite good. That's not really true. She's a great cook. Yeah, but I was saying she's a great cook. You're bringing yourself down. So you don't really want to bring yourself down. Find a way to make it work somewhat. Be careful. Say it nicely. Say it properly. Why not? Okay? That's what Yerucham says. Moving on. Another idea. There's an interesting machlokas here, even in understanding the dreams and how to see what's what. So you have the following story. Remember the story of the dreams? You have the cows. Out of the river come 7 beautiful looking cows. And then come out another 7 cows. They look terrible, very thin. And they stand next to the cows by the riverbank. The thin cows go ahead and they eat the fat cows. And he wakes up. And you can't tell that they have, they're eating them up. Later on we say we cannot even tell from, you can't even see any growth in the thin cows from the fat cows. So Rashi says, what do we learn from the fact that the thin cows ate the fat cows? This is in verse 4, Rashi. Vatochalno siman, it shows you that all the happiness of this being satiated, being full, will be forgotten in the days of hunger. That's what it means. When the thin cows eat up the fat cows, they make them disappear. It's like they weren't there ever in the first place. You forgot the last 7 years. Sometimes somebody does well in business. For a few years, he had some very, very good years. And after those good years, they get some very lean years. Years that are very, very tough. I think especially people who've been in property. Some years things were amazing for them. They were going, and somebody bought property in the year 2000, till 2008, they were laughing. I have friends of mine who told me, he says, I was a millionaire on paper. A guy said this to me. I was a millionaire on paper. Then what happened? Then came 2008, wiped him entirely out. So good years. And sometimes in 2009, he looks back, the fact that he had so much money in 2000, 2001, and 2002 becomes almost irrelevant. Because today's a pauper. Not anymore, but today's this, not the fellow I'm talking about. But sometimes in 2009 or 2010, you look back, the fact that you have money in 2000 becomes almost an irrelevancy because now you're struggling to put food on the table. That's as a techalna paras. The thin cows will eat up the fat cows. However, there's the Ramban takes a different view over here. And the Ramban with that answers a very important point. And he says the following. I think it's the Ramban, but my Chumash looks different. Just make sure that's the right one. Yes, it is. We'll see later on, there's the Ramban also in verse 4. We'll see later on a very interesting thing. Pharaoh has called in Yosef to do what? Interpret the dreams. Yosef stands up and he listens to Pharaoh's dreams, and when Pharaoh finishes giving him all the dreams, you know what Yosef says? Very interesting. Let me explain the dreams to you. The two dreams are really one dream, and God's taking the two things to tell you that it's coming right away. Behold, 7 good years are coming. You'll have plentiful food. And after the 7 good years will come 7 bad years, and we forget all of the goodness that we had before, and etc., etc. Gives them the whole dream. And then Yosef switches gears. And this is always a great discussion when you get into Parasha Mikeitz. Then Yosef says the following. Ve'ata yere Pharaoh. And now Pharaoh has to go ahead and has to make someone in charge. Ish. Let's find it. I'll tell you which verse it is. Pardon? Is it Lama Gimel? Yes. Now it's time, Pharaoh, to take a very clever man and make him in charge of Eretz Mitzrayim, and he should put people around, and they will take together all the extra food, and they put it in storehouses, etc., etc. Many of the commentators are baffled by this. Yosef, who asked you to comment or give advice? Remember, you're in front of Pharaoh. Pharaoh wasn't this cuddly, nice teddy bear. He wasn't a nice fellow, even though it comes across quite nicely in this Chumash. He's a ruthless man. We'll see later on the pharaohs that ruled the Jewish people. They slaughtered 150 Jewish kids in the morning, 150 Jewish kids at night to bathe in their bloods. That's the kind of people we're dealing with. Megalomaniac, crazy, power-hungry freaks. You don't just talk out of turn. You don't start giving suggestions. I have an idea now. Pardon? Did you say something without being asked? You've been called in to do one thing and one thing only. Interpret the dreams and get out. Yosef starts giving advice. Who asked you to give advice? Ramban says, do you know why Yosef gave advice? Because Yosef says that is what the dream is actually saying. Where? Let's look back at that verse. Because there are 2 ways of understanding what happens now. In verse 4, we said, as we mentioned before, the fat cows eat up the thin cows. That can mean one of 2 things. It can either mean, as Rashi said, that when the lean years come, they will entirely devour and make sure that the memory of those fat years disappears. And that is how we've always learned it. That's how Rashi translates it. However, Nachmanides Ramban translates it very differently. Ramban says the following. You know what it means that the thin cows ate the fat cows? How did the thin cows survive? That's what he's saying. Let's read the sentence. We're talking about thin cows, scrawny cows. They look like they're going to be blown over by the wind. They look awful. They're about to die. And then they come upon a form of sustenance. What sustenance do the thin cows get? the 7 fat cows. What are the 7 fat cows that we just said? The 7 good years. Says Yosef, you know what the dream is telling you, Pharaoh? You know where you're going to get food from for the 7 lean years. The 7 lean years you're going to survive based on the food from the 7 fat years. So that the thin cows eat the fat cows and don't die. So Yosef says, wait a minute. That is the dream. This is not an extra part which is external to the dream. No, this is what the dream is saying. There'll be 7 good years, and afterwards come 7 years of famine. And the 7 years of famine are going to do what? They're going to survive on the 7 good years. Yeah? Yeah? Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? Shmuel, you with me? Yeah? And therefore says Yosef, I'm not here to give advice to Pharaoh, but I'm here to interpret the dreams. This is part of the dreams. The dreams are saying that you, Pharaoh, need to make sure, and I'm not telling you who, but need to make sure that you are so on top of the food in the good years that you can set it aside to make sure that during the bad years, during the years of famine, you'll be able to survive with the food that you had in the good years. That's how he explains it. Okay, so that's again, I think it's a very beautiful explanation. Okay, last thing that we're going to see for tonight is the following. Finally, Yosef is going to be brought before Pharaoh. So, the Sar Hamashkim, the wine butler, tells Pharaoh, this is not a great guy, but look, he might be able to do the job for you. Verse 14, Vayishlach Paro sends Vaikras Yosef. They called for Yosef. Vayritzuhu min abar, and they rushed him out of that pit. Vaygalach, he was shaved to look proper. My guess is they didn't have an in-house barber in prison in Egypt. This is not, like we said, this is not strange ways. I'm sure in regular prisons there must be barbers. I guess it'll cost money, and there might be people that have been barbers when they were on the outside, and there might be people that learn how to become barbers inside in the slammer, whatever. But you'll be able, you don't walk into strange ways, meaning a whole bunch of Nazarites, all looking like, how long have you been here? 22 years, look at what I look like. You get to get a haircut. Yosef probably didn't have a haircut for years. Where was he going to get a haircut from? So now they take Yosef out, Vaygalach, shave him, Vaychalev Samosov, put on fresh clothing. They got to stand in front of the king looking like some kind of peasant, pauper, coming straight out of jail. We know a jailbird coming in front of the king. Vayavo el Paro. Says, again, Rabbi Yerucham. Vayritzu min abo. What is the shoresh? What is the root of the word vayritzu? Rotz. Yeah, to run. What does that mean? They quickly got him out of the bar. They quickly got him out of that pit. Why do they need to get him out of the pit quickly? Just get him out whenever, you say, quick, no, get, let's go. Okay, now he's by Pharaoh. Explains Rabbi Yerucham that, Iris is here. Explains Rabbi Yerucham, we're missing Michael, that when God wants something to end, it will end. But it's not a process that happens. When it's over, boom, it's over. If you look, for example, at Yetzias Mitzrayim, suddenly, midnight, Makas Bechoros, suddenly all the Jews are gone. Go, quick, get out. They rushed them out of Mitzrayim. Why do we eat matzah? We got rushed out of Egypt. We didn't have the time to bake bread before we left. That's how much in a rush we were. What do you mean? Take your time, been here 210 years, let me finish, let me get my stuff together. Out! Go! Out! The Navi tells us, God will come suddenly to his heichel, to his great palace, meaning the Beis Hamikdash. Mashiach will just show up. Just suddenly be here. And he says, this is what we learn here from Yosef as well. Yosef, for whatever reason, needed to be punished. Yosef, for whatever reason, needed to sit in jail. Yosef, now it's time for his punishment to end. It's time for Yosef to make his way out of jail. How quickly, how soon does Yosef make his way out of jail? Instantaneously. As soon as the time comes, boom, it's over. It's done. We don't wait beyond that. That's what the Torah tells us. That's what we're learning over here. If you think about it, somebody that needs to get out of jail. Do you know what it takes for someone to finally get out of jail? Until all the paperwork is done. Until they open up the cell and they double and they triple check him that he's not left anything behind and that he's not... I mean, literally, if you read about it, I think it's now a year, 2 years, I can't remember. When was it? 2 years ago? That Rubashkin was let free, or last year? Shmuley, when was Rubashkin let free? Do you remember?
No idea.
Shalom Mordechai Rubashkin? I think it was last year. 2 years. Can't remember.
Sure.
Don't remember. It was either last year or 2 years. Anybody who knows can comment. I don't remember. There was a fellow by the name of Shalom Mordechai Rubashkin. Very, very wealthy man at one point, and he owned a great, big meat processing plant called Agri Processors in Postville, Iowa. Tiny little town of nothing. I met somebody from Postville, Iowa over the summer. He's the son-in-law to Rabbi Golem from Sheffield. So, I mean, he showed me it's tiny, like the size of Sedgley Park. Literally tiny. That's a whole town. And they got this big processing plant, and basically the entire town lives off that processing plant. He said it's so small they don't even have a non-Jewish pizzeria. That's how small it is. There's not enough people living in the town to even be able to give you a non-kosher pizza shop. And this is America. Remember, they're very into pizza. That's how small it is. So this man was in jail he had illegal workers, Mexicans, whatever. There was a whole story, and they came down and they did a raid on his plant, and he was supposed to get the maximum he could have ever gotten for what he did would have been, 7 to 9 years. He was given 27 years or something like that. Something crazy. And there'd always been a discussion about whether it was anti-Semitic or it wasn't anti-Semitic. And last year or 2 years ago, I think it was last year, suddenly out of nowhere, boom, he came out. From one day to the next. They called him in, they said, you're free. And he left. He left all the stuff behind in the cell. He says, you know what, I'm not even going back to the cell. I'm not going back to get my things. I'm free, I'll walk out now. Just get me out. Walk back, who knows if things are going to change. I'm just out. And that's what happened. He's just out. But there was so much that went on in the background until you got him out. I mean, the president didn't give him a pardon. He did not get a pardon. They were trying to get a pardon from the president. The presidential pardon was not what he got. He received a commuted sentence. No, they turned his sentence December 17 set free. Thank you, Van. That's what I thought. So it was last year. So just now, a year ago, Hanukkah time, if I remember correctly, he got set free. And there was a big, that Trump he gave him a shortened sentence, and because he gave him a shortened sentence, and the amount of time he said already was enough, that was what he needed to sit in jail, that moment he got out. But you know how much work went into getting the Shalom Mordechai Rubashkin out. Do you know how much pressure there was put on Trump and how much political lobbying and until you got to the point where they signed the papers and then this and then that. He says, well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not like that. You don't have to go through a political process and you don't have to go through all the paperwork and get everybody to agree. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to happen, when he wants the person to be set free, boom, he's free. On the spot. Because that's God. He's not limited. That's how Mashiach comes. That's how the freedom from Egypt comes. And that's what Rav Yerucham tells us over here also. By Ritzum in a bar. Why did they run him out of the bar? He was finished. Yosef was done, he sat his sentence, he's done. And therefore, not a second longer is he going to stay in that pit than he has to. So, as soon as he was finished, the 12 years are done, out, come out. Because when God wants to do something, he doesn't need to cut through the red tape. He doesn't need to go back to Parliament for them to debate it for 5 days. He doesn't need 2 years to discuss what Brexit is not going to be. People are happy, people are not happy. It is what we voted for, it's not what we voted for. A second referendum, we shouldn't. The whole thing goes out the window. God says, this is how we're doing it, that's how it happens. That's what you need to learn. That's what you learn from this thing. Okay? Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Thank you for joining me live. Next week, share again. I think next week we'll have a bit of a shorter share, but next week, share again, regular time. Please like and share so that friends of yours can see this as well. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.